Hi everyone, a very quick video today showing you the very basics of magazine transfer on a gel plate. So this is a trend that's going around on social media a lot at the moment because the results are absolutely beautiful. So if you've never tried it or you are struggling with the technique, hopefully there's some top tips and tricks here to help you get started with that first perfect magazine transfer. So to begin with the gel plate, my favourite is the one from Gelli Arts. I've not had this that long. I have tried other brands, but this one always seems to give me the best possible results. Now I always keep it within the plastic packaging that it's in to make sure it doesn't dry out. So I tend to also put that down onto a mat so that it's not going to slip anywhere. Even a glass mat would work, and if there's any debris on it, which there shouldn't be too much if you've been keeping it in the plastic, make sure that's removed before you start. So place that down first. Then the paper that you're going to lift off with, honestly, it doesn't really matter if you've got a good gel plate. So I'm going to be using just copy paper. Some of this is a little heavier weight, some of it is more like a watercolour paper. We've got our usual paints, so I've got acrylic paint here, I've got a black and a white, they're the most important ones if you're using white paper. If you're using a coloured paper other than white, you want to go with a clear gesso instead of the white here. I've got a brayer as well. I'll go in more detail about all these things as we work through. Now the magazine choice is extremely important, and this can make or break your magazine transfers. So I go with Vogue every time. There are other glossy magazines of course that will work, but the point is you need them to be very glossy. I love this magazine because I need only buy it once. It's not expensive. This one was £3.99. It's got like 300 pages of just loads and loads of images here, so many that I can use. What we are looking for specifically is high contrast images. So what's going to happen is the black and the white images are going to transfer the best, and I'm going to explain how and why this happens as we work through. Now I know that in here there are some, I mean that is fabulous, but because she's got white hair we may not see that all that well, so there are some that would be so beautiful as well. The one that I've already chosen to use should be around here somewhere. Again, dark hair, dark eyes, perfect. Now these images are absolutely ideal. I've already used one of these previously on a magazine transfer, so I know it's going to work really, really well. So because we've got black and white, I know that this is going to be ideal. I'm going to just tear this out. Obviously the page is bigger than my plate, so I don't need to worry about how it's going to fit, if I need to put anything else on. And the first thing we're going to do onto a clean plate is put down some opaque, it needs to be opaque, not translucent, but some opaque black paint. So I'm going to put a tiny little bit on. We don't need a lot. I'm going to use my brayer and spread this around. So as you can see, a reasonably thin layer there. If you have a little bit too much, you can take it off. Now this is, rather than a black, this is a very dark brown. It will work in the same way. So I'm going to just lift a little bit more of that off. I don't want any gaps in the paint, so make sure it's nicely spread evenly. There we go. Okay, and clean my brayer off. So now I'm going to take my magazine image before the paint dries, and I'm going to place it onto the plate. Now, if you're careful, you can of course make sure that you're placing it in the perfect position. I've just popped that over, making sure there's no air bubbles in there. I think her head is around here somewhere. But like I say, you can cut that down and mark it if you need to on the back so that you know. And just pressing this in to the surface of the plate just with my fingers, just working out any air bubbles as well if there's any in there, and just give that a few seconds. Now what's happening is when a magazine page is printed, you're going to get toner that's going to sit on top of the paper. The darker colours, like the black, is much thicker toner. Where there's white, there's no toner. Okay, so the paper will absorb the paint, whereas the areas with the toner will not. Look at that. How amazing is that? So although it all looks black, that is black paint on the white areas, but you can just see the image there still, and you've got toner where the black areas are. That toner has resisted the paint and not lifted it up. So I'm actually going to leave this because I can also still use that side. So leave that to dry. Once you've used that once, you won't be able to use that again. So now we leave that to dry. Okay, leave it to air dry. Some people like to get a hairdryer on there. I don't like adding heat to my gel plate. I do worry that it can damage it. So you need to leave that to dry. As you can see, my fingerprint there, that is still wet. So I'm going to give that a good 10-15 minutes in a warm room. Make sure it is completely dry. You can leave it for days if you want to. The next stage will reinvigorate it and bring it back to life anyway. Now, while that's drying, I am going to take a dampened cotton bud and just pick up any little specks where I don't want them, particularly around the face. What you can also be doing while this is drying is clean your brayer. If you've had that black paint on and you haven't cleaned it all off, it is going to now transfer to your white. So be doing this while that's drying too. Okay, so 10 minutes have passed. This warm is really nice and warm. Just going to test with a clean finger very gently, not around the facial features, which of course is where the detail is. Just pressing gently, making sure that none comes off onto my fingers. So I think that is completely dry. So now I can add my paint. Again, I'm going with opaque. This can be translucent if you wish, doesn't matter. But if you don't have white paper that you're going to be putting on your gel plate, you're using a craft cardstock, for example, or maybe a coloured paper, maybe a book page. They are great for pulling prints with. You want to go with a clear gesso instead of an acrylic paint. But what this is going to do now is this is going to reinvigorate the black paint. But we'll put a little bit on here. So just squeeze a touch on. Use our brayer to just very gently rub that over the surface of the print. I like to go all over the plate, even if the print doesn't cover the plate. And then that excess, take that off of your brayer. You can see I still had a little bit of the darker paint on there. And then we're going to start lifting this paint off very gently. We're not pressing down, we're just letting the roller go over the top and lift off. Now, as that paint is sitting on the transfer, that is starting to reinvigorate it. It's starting to dampen it, and it will allow it to loosen and lift off with your paper. So as you can see there, we can now see the print coming through. So that's around about ready now to pull. So I'm going to press my cardstock. Like I say, this one is a watercolour cardstock. It's an inexpensive one, which is why I use it for pulling prints. I wouldn't use it for watercolouring on. Although it's classed as watercolour paper, it was a very, very cheap pad, and it doesn't act in the way I'd like a good watercolour paper to work. So it's just a bit thicker than a copy paper, but a copy paper is absolutely fine if that's what you've got to hand. I'm just going to really press this in everywhere. If you want to take your brayer and add pressure this way, you can do, but you really, really want to make sure you have pressed and brayed down. Some people like to use their knuckles to do so, to get added pressure. And just keep going. Now, it doesn't matter if this dries. Some people like to take this away and just let it dry overnight before pulling it. That's up to you. You can try that dependent on your paper, your plate, the paint you've used. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I prefer to do this almost straight away, but I'm going to work from the bottom first. I'm going to lift up and make sure that that's working. As you can see, if I'm happy, let's pull everything off. And that has transferred onto my paper. Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? I do love that sort of rustic, distressed look that you get with these magazine pulls. I just think they're absolutely beautiful. Now, I'm going to whiz through another one for you, exactly the same, but this time using coloured paint behind it. Okay, so this time I've chosen this black and white image. Again, there's a bit more grey in this one, so we'll see what happens. I'm going to go with the same black paint. So as I say, acrylic paint this is, and put a thin layer down. I'm going to lift off the excess paint until there's just a thin layer on there. And now I'm going to take my magazine image and I'm going to press her down onto the plate and really burnish that down. So just giving that maybe 30 seconds to a minute to absorb any paint or stick any paint to it that's going to, and then gently lift up and see what's left. So there we go, we can just see the face coming through there, absolutely fabulous. And now to just leave that to dry. So once again, just checking carefully that that's not going to lift off, so that's all dry. I'm going to use some brighter colours this time to lift this, so just small blobs of these bright colours because we don't actually need a lot of paint at all. I'm looking for these to mix quite nicely, which they are doing. Hopefully they are just starting to loosen that black paint again now. Nice. So I'm going to take the excess off on my paper and then start pressing that into the plate very gently. As you can see, that image is just starting to come back through, so that's nice. There's a little bit more there than I probably want, and down there. Okay, nice. Let's put, now this is copy paper, so this is just some plain white paper. Press this one in, give that a really good burnish, make sure it's lifting everything up. Obviously the copy paper has absolutely no toner and no print on it, so this is going to all absorb into the paper and allow it to be lifted up. It's almost like the toner on the magazine print just can't get a grip on the paint and it's left behind instead. Perfect. Okay, so are we ready? Lifting this up. Look at that. Everything's coming off beautifully. And there we have that image from the magazine transferred onto a gel plate print. How beautiful is that? So we've got our basic one with white, and I would definitely say if you're just beginning, test it out just with white. It's much easier than worrying about colours, and then work with colours. You can start layering up, you can start stamping in the background and all sorts once you get to grips with this. So I hope that you found this helpful, everybody. If you have, there's some other gel plate printing videos on my channel. I'll make sure the playlist is linked just here for you so you can go and check that out. And if you enjoyed this tutorial and you haven't done already, I'd love it if you could subscribe to my channel. Thank you, everybody. Take care, and I'll see you again soon.